Welcome, friends, to Driving and Dragons and our continued exploration of alignment in TTRPGs. I'm Daniel, and
I am the law!
that's right, folks. Today we are exploring the first side of the ethical axis and what it means to be lawful in TTRPGs. Given that the far easier to parse out moral axis of good and evil has the bro SR guys pumping out strawmen like a scarecrow factory, I am legitimately excited to see the online mental gymnastics that the ethical axis causes. Before we get into it, please consider joining over on my Patreon, where paid membership gives you an automatic entry to win the channel project cars and the money goes towards fixing them up. Also, like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube because that really does push the channel up in the algorithm, getting those ideas and discussions more exposure. So on to ethics. To be perfectly honest, the ethical axis is far and away the more nuanced and complex of the two sides. Part of it is because true ethics are a rarity in human development. Most people are unethical, not in the sense that they behave in a disreputable fashion, but simply that they lack any actual personal ethics and simply have their principles dictated by social pressures. So most of us simply do not grasp the core mechanics of that true moral compass. American psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg laid out this in his comprehensive stage theory of moral development in 1958. And without going too deep, he said there's 6 increasingly complex stages of moral development within a human being. Stage 1 is punishment obedience. Rules are only obeyed because of a direct relationship with punishment. Behavior is entirely determined by consequences. Stage 2 is the conventional stage, or as my dad called it, the me stage, where behavior is based on consequences, but now the decisions are made more on the basis of seeking reward as opposed to avoiding punishment. Stage 3 is the one that's relevant to this topic, the nice girl, good boy stage. This is as far as most people will ever progress. The person still has no personal ethical or moral structure. Their decisions are based on what society tells them is good or bad. It isn't even developed into an unwritten social contract at this point, where abstract concepts of right and wrong start to develop, which happens in stage 4. Why does this matter? What does it have to do with lawful alignments? Well, look at the highest level of development most human beings reach. Rules and laws are what matter when making decisions. Does that sound familiar? Sound a lot like, well, you're lawful neutral, so that means if a law is on the books, you have to follow and enforce it. How about, well, Mr. Paladin, the law in this area is that you can be tortured to death for no reason by the count, so you can't stop that even if it's evil. It's legal. It's the law. This is one of the most common misunderstandings of a lawful alignment. Conversely, let's visit our good friend moral relativism's cousin, ethical relativism, and find out another outright false statement when regarding a lawful character. Lawful just means you follow a code. As long as it meets your code, it doesn't matter about the laws of the land. This is also false. These are both in the nice girl, good guy understanding of ethical principles and would actually be a sign of a neutral character. This is why, while most NPCs that populate the world are in fact neutral, they tend to behave in a lawful neutral manner so long as they live in a relatively stable society. This brings us to what it means to have a lawful alignment. We'll start with the definition taken from the 3.5 edition Player's Handbook. Quote, lawful characters tell the truth, keep their word, respect authority, honor tradition, and judge those who fall short of their duties. Law implies honor, trustworthiness, obedience to authority, and reliability. On the downside, lawfulness can include closed-mindedness, reactionary adherence to tradition, judgmentalness, and a lack of adaptability. Those who consciously promote lawfulness say that only lawful behavior creates a society in which people can depend on each other and make the right decisions in full confidence that others will act as they should, unquote. I'm going to go ahead and pull another line from the 3.5e Player's Handbook real quick, just as an aside. I'm paraphrasing because there's a version of this statement for each axis, ethical and moral, but it is a key beginning to understanding what alignment really is. Quote, being devoted to a particular alignment can be a conscious choice, but more often it is an inherent personality trait that you recognize rather than choose, unquote. Remember that. It isn't just that you decided to be lawful, it's that being lawful naturally makes the most sense to you on a subconscious level, a natural predisposition to find the lawful option more appealing and rational. So being lawful would be the conservative position if you wanted to kind of get political. And that's lowercase c conservatism, as in the philosophical conservatism, not right, left, Republican, conservative party, etc. I'm reminded of the analogy of a fence across the road. When traveling, a lawful, i.e. conservative, character comes across a fence barring the way. He will not remove the fence until he fully understands why it is there, because if the fence got put up, it obviously got put up for a reason. Sometimes that means he is slowed down for no reason and may even arrive too late to his destination because it took time to determine why the fence was there before he removed it, or because going around the fence took too much additional time. But it also means that he never tears down the fence and gets trampled where the angry bulls on the other side stampede for the newly created exit. A conservative conserves. A lawful character also conserves. There is a process for changing laws. That process helps ensures that laws are well thought out and that time is taken to consider the unintended consequences of such a change. Yes, there are situations where the law isn't entirely sufficient and where there are trade-offs. But on the whole, respecting the law will result in better outcomes for most of the people most of the time. One of the most lawful statements in the history of humankind is Blackstone's ratio, made appropriately by English jurist William Blackstone. It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent suffer. To the lawful character, this is key. He looks at the 10 guilty men going free and says, the system is this way for a reason, and we aren't changing it or going against it without a very good reason and evidence the harm won't outweigh the good. Lawful characters are trustworthy because they see honesty as better in the long run. If everyone lies to suit their immediate goals, you don't have a society anymore because no one can trust anybody to do what they're supposed to do. Lawful characters are obedient to authority, not because they always agree with the person in charge, but because they feel that the overall system provides the best outcomes for the most people on balance. They will not bite their nose to spite their face, as they see it. So, how do you more effectively play a lawful character? When we are talking good and evil, we can be very reductive and simply say, what is best for others or what is best for me? It is a simple practice of thinking of things on a spectrum that ranges from only thinking of others to thinking of myself but considering others to only thinking of myself. Law is not so easy to grasp, even when it is black and white, because what a player has to consider when making decisions regarding the ethical axis isn't easily summed up in a single question. How do I use the system to accomplish this task? Can this be accomplished without breaking the system? How can this needed exception be made without actually making an exception? Another layer to add is personal ethics and codes. As stated above, a lawful character is in most cases naturally lawful. In a vacuum devoid of a society, they will seek to organize things into power structures and systems that can operate on their own with only a little maintenance. This means that they will have a natural inclination towards developing their own code of behavior. A good rule of thumb is that a lawful character will have a baseline of the society that they were part of throughout most of their development. They will almost always meet this baseline at a minimum, but will often exceed it personally. Let's do some examples, focusing on two hypothetical player characters. PC1 is born into a barbaric society. Justice is personal and harsh. Laws are minimal. Traditions are largely family affairs. The baseline for this character's lawful nature will be an almost dogmatic adherence to traditions such as honor duels to solve personal grievances, respect for elders within the family, and whatever those traditions and laws may be. PC2 is born into a great society governed by a litany of formal social practices such as controlling one's emotions, maintaining a certain level of civility, and having a certain level of responsibility for the behavior and well-being of guests, as well as a code of laws that fills a library and serves as the backbone for a complex legal system with carefully curated punishments. The baseline for this character would be that a high level of courtesy towards others, handling matters as prescribed by the principles of that legal code, and generally adhering to those social regulations, even when not required by the environment that he's in. Both of these characters are lawful. Each could be more strict than their base society to start with, but as they develop as characters, they will resist any pressure to regress below those standards while being generally open to moving above those standards. When PC1 visits the land of PC2, he doesn't fight against the rules of this new, stricter society. He understands these rules exist for a reason and does his level best to at least respect them while he investigates their reasoning and determines for himself if they exist for a good reason. While he is in that society, he will always try to act in line with those laws and traditions, even if he disagrees with them, and actively tries to influence people to change them when he sees it as appropriate. When he leaves that society, he will take with him the parts of that society that he feels improve the system he already has, perhaps returning to his people and arguing for them to adopt a more fair system of legal enforcement, or telling others that perhaps a little more common courtesy would result in fewer honor duels and less dead young warriors. When PC2 travels to the lands of PC1, he may refuse to participate in their system of justice by not attempting to force his own laws on them, but perhaps instead of killing a thief, he simply beats them in combat and retrieves his property, stating that his honor is satisfied and doesn't demand the death penalty. Perhaps if the tribal tradition is fight to the death or forfeit the goods, he would choose the latter rather than execute an obviously inferior opponent for petty theft, and instead take measures to prevent future theft. He would also maintain his courteous behavior and his demeanor despite the society not requiring such niceties, while also not taking offense when their customs don't measure up to his standard. A good example of this dynamic is in David Gemmell's Draenei Saga book, Quest for Lost Heroes. Minor spoiler alert for Quest of Lost Heroes for those who haven't read it. In the book, an ambassador from the Dicey Empire, which is an Eastern nation that's a stand-in for a romanticized Han China. This ambassador, he arrives at the court of the Nadir Khan, which is an obvious parallel to the Mongols, because there was a diplomatic marriage between the princes of the Chiatsi and the Khan. Throughout the visit, the Khan and the Nadir people that are there, they consistently violate the strict social codes of the Chiatsi society, causing the ambassador's valet, to go almost apoplectic because of the constant insults. Things like providing an insufficient number of rooms for him to stay in, not bowing a specific number of times, skipping formal introductions, offering drinks from a communal bowl, barbarian things. However, the ambassador is the picture of calm and points out that, albeit with some obvious patronizing condescension, that these people are merely uneducated in the proper ways, and that it would be also unacceptable and impolite for them, while guests of the Khan, to criticize his traditions and ways. This is a picture of lawful behavior. This is having a code that you hold yourself to while making all rational efforts to respect the traditions and laws of another while in their homeland. Notice this is also in regards to a nominally friendly exchange. That goes out the window in a conflict situation, bringing us up to the comical paradox of what does a lawful character do when there is an unjust but legal execution happening. This is often presented as a lawful good in a lawful evil city situation, Can the paladin stop the execution? Must he stop it? Does this violate his alignment regardless of which way he goes? Honestly, this decision would have virtually nothing to do with the ethical axis. That's right, this isn't a law or chaos situation. If the system failed or was corrupted, stopping the execution is a lawful act, even in a friendly city. Why? Because the law was perverted to lead to the unjust execution. Stopping it is done to correct that perversion, even if the lawful character is perceived by others for a time to be acting against the laws and traditions of society. What about the society where there was no perversion? This is simply how the laws work. The law is the king said you die, so you die. Well, if this is an enemy nation, as is generally portrayed by the hypothetical, then law doesn't even factor in here. It is an enemy society that the lawful character is actively fighting against already. That system is the enemy. Now, the lawful character would generally seek out a way to use the system to save the condemned, but if that isn't an option, it isn't an option. This stems from the good guy, nice girl understanding of ethical principles. It is not an actual paradox when you understand how morality and ethics work on a personal and abstract level. It's only a concern when it is viewed from the concrete view of what society tells me. And it's funny when you think about it. Far and away, the most powerful use of alignment in-game is not mechanical. It is the role-playing function of helping a player make decisions for a character who shares a different core perception of reality. We have a concrete definition of evil to give players and GMs a navigational beacon to guide them into the thought process that is unnatural to them as people. Well, at least we hope it is. How does the criminal come up with his scheme? I would never think of that. This is the same thing. Understanding the ethical side of alignment in game can actually help a person stuck in that third stage of psychological development break through to the fourth stage. However, it is difficult because while the vast majority of people eventually come to a fully developed sense of self and others, most never develop a capacity for understanding abstract principles regarding the application of right and wrong from an ethical perspective. And I guess that's a failing of parents. While some of us are blessed with parents who hammer in the concept of doing what's right because it's right and doing things in an ethical manner from a young age, most of us just get sharing and caring hammered into us in preschool while not even hearing the word ethics until it's taken as a humanities credit in college. Either way, that's what I've got on the law and how to better play a lawful character. Given all the background information here, I assume that my video on chaotic alignment will be a little bit shorter since I dove headfirst into the periphery of the ethical axis here. Let me know what I missed. Did the nuts and bolts of lawful alignment get lost in the academia here, or did this help bring you a better understanding? I'm just going to leave you with this. Anybody can play good or evil well. For those two, it's largely just a conscious decision of the player to either do it well or phone it in. But a player who can truly embody a lawful or chaotic alignment well, that is a true student of the role-playing side of the game. And for you GMs out there, good luck. Because this is one where you really have to be on your A game before you start throwing around complaints about PCs acting outside of their alignment. And I'll see you guys next time.